Hi, everybody. We'd like to open the meeting with just asking if there's anybody with public comment or question they want to ask. We don't want to hold up the presentations by much, but I think we want to establish that as a practice in case there are some concerns. So does anybody have anything? Fred, come on up. It's best for everybody, I think, to use the mic, because even though you may think you talk loudly, it helps people in the back.
I thank you all for coming and for presenting, and I think you're going to hear when we actually go through this process in terms of the actual project and design that there are a lot of people who have a lot of interest in seeing development turn out in very different ways, have different needs, so you have to be all things to all people. I'm on the board of Somerville Community Corporation, active with the Mystic View Task Force, and I guess I wanted to speak to something that I'm sure you'll hear lots of, and that we do want office and R&D development, and we want to use this as a development process that raises revenue for the city, creates a totally walkable space and a very friendly pedestrian environment, transit friendly. We also want to make sure that given all of the displacement that's going to be happening in Union Square as it gets developed, that we have a disproportionate share of affordable housing. The Summer Vision document calls for 20%. There's going to be a lot of linkage funding that comes out of your or somebody's developments in Union Square. And the linkage rate, the inclusionary rate in Union Square is higher than it is in the rest of the city, but it's still not going to be enough to produce 20% affordable housing. So this is a great opportunity to plow some of that money back into Union Square to create affordable housing that's going to replace what we're losing in other parts where the Green Line comes and displacement happens. So your ability to work with the community, balance many objectives is going to be real important. Thanks.
And these should be directed either to the whole room or to all the development teams, of which there are 9. Any other questions or comments? Sure. Okay, make sure you don't repeat anything. Okay.
All right. First of all, sorry for not, dressing all spiffy like all of you have. I just wanted to say that, what was I going to say? Sorry, a little nervous. The main reason why I came here is because I want to make sure that the city that I'm growing up in, stays not only how it is, but changes at the same time. I want the, way that we have now, where there's a large amount of diversity in the culture that we have and the people that live in our city, and at the same time I want to see our city change so that we do have these this awesome green line, this awesome redevelopment plan, and I just want to make sure that it gets louder the closer. All right, I have not used a mic before, so so yeah, again, I want to make sure that Somerville stays a diverse place, and the one real reason why, the one real threat to that is because since the Green Line is coming in, that means that, obviously Somerville's going to be much more of a popular place, and because it's going to be more popular, that means that the house prices are going to skyrocket, well, not skyrocket, but at least rise. And I want to make sure that the people who live here right now get what they deserve by, making sure that they're not run out by all these people who, I don't want to demonize these people that are coming into Somerville, but at the same time, I just want to make sure that all the families and children of the families that I know at this moment can still stay in Somerville as they did for their entire lifetime.
Anybody else? Okay. So what we're going to do, I'm going to turn it over to Ed. He's probably got some announcements. And then I'm going to let him introduce each of the development teams as we proceed. I want to break at the end of each presentation so that people can ask a few questions if they want to of each development team rather than holding it to the end, because I think it's just a little difficult to go through 2 hours and then ask questions. So off we go.
Thank you, Wig. I will be very quick. Just have a few announcements. Members of the CAC should have received an email from Amanda in the past few days. We had alluded to this meeting when we met, I think, 2 or 3 weeks ago, and that is Team Better Block will be in town on the 25th of this month. They would be very eager to meet with the CAC. They would like to hold a walking tour at 6 o'clock, and then would like to reconvene up here at 7 o'clock to discuss their ideas and their concepts, and to try to figure out how best that they can work with not just the CAC, but with folks who live here, who work here as well. So I would ask that all of you make every attempt to be available. I think we will be done with the developer presentations on the 18th of this month, so I think it's logical for the CAC to decide how they want to schedule their next meetings. But again, if you could be available on the 25th, that would be great. There have also been a couple of questions asked in the past week. I got an inquiry from Eric asking whether or not it would be possible to submit written questions to each of the development teams. The answer is yes. Obviously, if there are questions that come to you in the middle of the night or whenever, please, you can reach Amanda, you can reach Sue Thomas, you can reach me. We will pose them to each of the development teams or to an individual team, but please, feel free to do so. In addition, Friday afternoon, I saw a list of questions from Joe Beckman. I was away for most of the weekend. I was able to respond to Joe and to the members of the team before we arrived here this evening. So anything that you'd like to ask us, more than happy to do so. So those are my announcements. There are a few of us in this room who are old enough to remember a very old and not very good movie that was entitled, if this is Tuesday, it must be Belgium. If this is 6 o'clock, we must be at the CAC meeting, because we just came from a meeting with a redevelopment authority in which we saw 3 very well done presentations by the respondents to the team. This evening we will be meeting with a partnership between Federal Realty and National Development. We'll be meeting with a group called Union Square Station Associates, which is a group out of Chicago, and we will be meeting with a group out of Portland, Oregon, called Gertie Edlin. As I said, I've seen all 3 of them. Very well done, well qualified. So I'd like to begin by introducing Dawn Briggs and Ed Barstana from the team of Federal Realty and National Development. So Dawn, you're on.
Well, thank you all for joining us. I was talking to Wade before the meeting started and trying to convince him if we could just move this outside and I'll take advantage of that glimpse of spring we're getting. But really appreciate you coming up here today, and I know this is very important for all of our futures here. So I'm Don Briggs, President of Federal Realty Boston. I'll be joined in our presentation today by Ed Marsteiner, Principal with National Development, and Tim Mount, Principal with Streetworks Design. You know, I know we only have 30 minutes, but if you really have a burning question along the way, this is meant to be a collaborative process for all of us. So interrupt us. This is going to be the beginning of a real meaningful dialogue.
Good evening. In anticipation of this RFQ, Don and I actually got together for breakfast to talk about the opportunity in the project and potentially collaborating together in our effort. And after reviewing the scope of the project, I think we quickly came to the conclusion that well, we could do a good job on this project on our own. We both have a significant presence in this market and experience in this type of project. We thought together we could really pull together a team in all of our efforts to really provide a great opportunity for Union Square and Somerville to combine our skill sets. So we thought it might be helpful actually to talk about a few specific reasons that we talked about at that breakfast as to why we're interested in working together. For me, one of those main reasons was capital. I think working with Federal, being a public company, is really unparalleled when it comes to the capital structure of this deal. A company that has a $9 billion market cap and access to public markets, I think is absolutely the right capital for a long-term project like this. Our structure, actually a national, our primary equity source is a private equity fund of discretionary capital. And the issue with funds is that they have a defined time horizon, and they often have annual return hurdles that you need to meet. And I actually do not think that is the right form of capital for a project like this. The second reason is probably a little more obvious in working with the Federal team, and that's in that they're very involved in Somerville today. I believe that development is a local game. Knowing the town you're working in, the folks in the community, the people that sit on the boards is very valuable. They're obviously doing that with their Assembly Road project here. And also in terms of working with the MBTA, they're working currently to develop the first new station that the MBTA has built in 25 years over at Assembly Row. The same team is designing the station here in Union Square, and that relationship will be very valuable in having a seamless transition to our efforts here in Union Square.
And we too had a number of reasons why we chose to partner with National Development. I think first and foremost is it's a great complementary skill set. They bring to the table 30 years of experience in the Boston marketplace. They've developed over 20 million square feet, a diversity of product type that includes entrepreneurial office buildings, R&D, senior housing, just a whole lot of opportunistic development types. Second is they have spent 30 years developing in the Boston marketplace, and with that comes deep relationships. They know the whole network of brokers. They have great relationships at institutions. They know a number of the venture capital firms, and most importantly, they have great relationships with tenants. And finally, I think together, they bring a nimbleness, and together we make great strategic partners. This is not a cookie-cutter business, and you have to be able to be creative how we structure land transactions, how we structure tenant transactions, how we structure a public-private partnership, and essentially be flexible and nimble in our thinking. So added to that team is Streetworks Design, VHB, Forcier, and Sanborn Head. And collectively, all of us have been working together for almost 20 years. But more importantly, all of us have worked together for the last decade at Assembly Row. And I think that's really meaningful. You have a team that knows each other, has worked together, has collaborated together, and can hit the ground running. I mean, we can read each other's thoughts. And that doesn't end with us. That actually goes and includes the city of Somerville and this community. You all have been our partners for the last decade at Assembly Row, and we fully embrace the partnership that we're going to take on at Union Square. Because it's really about how we collaboratively come up with and execute on our collective vision for Union Square. So what is that vision for Union Square? I think it's really founded in the Union Square of today. It's not only the energy and the work that the city has put into the Summer Vision Plan and the Union Square Plan, but it's the investment and the time that's been put in by the families, the artists, the residents that all live in the neighborhoods that surround Union Square, by organizations like Union Square Main Streets that has really cultivated a vibe and an experience in Union Square. It's by an investment that this community has made in places like, innovative places like the Fringe, the Artisans Asylum, and most recently in Greentown Labs, which creates a great foundation for innovative ecosystem. And really the businesses that have been here and populated the Union Square for a long time. You all are the folks that have the vision for Union Square. You've lived it. It's part of the vibe and the funkiness that actually exists there today. We've spent the last 20 years enhancing and developing neighborhoods. And for us, I use that word purposely, neighborhood. It is not about a collection of buildings. This isn't a project. This is a neighborhood. It's about the space between those buildings. And it's not simply about the space. It's about how the people use the space between those buildings. When you look at what happens in Union Square today, and the creativity and the excitement that happens between the spaces and between the spaces and the buildings in Union Square, and you, the inhabitants, will be the energy in the neighborhood that is Union Square long term. So we really focus on that as a part of our process. and we're excited to share your vision and help implement and execute that vision in Union Square. Next, I'd like to turn it over to Tim now, who'll give us talk a little bit about our design principles.
So the diagram on the screen is showing Union Square, obviously, but the primary organization. Sorry. Okay. Like you, I'm nervous with my friends. So the diagram shows the primary organizing elements of Union Square, partly existing, some new, but we believe all these components are critical for the long-term success of Union Square. Fortunately, there's a significant existing character here in the architecture, in the scale and tenants, the open space, in the artwork, all of this that we can build upon. Fortunately, there's a very quirky character created here by layers of decisions over time. Something that we had to create at Assembly Row already exists here. It's a substantial place to start. Certainly not created by a grid. But those components that we'll talk about a little bit are gateways, open space, connecting streets, including bike paths, the T, artwork, and scale. So all the next slides that I'm going to be talking from are examples of those components that this team has executed already. Gateways as a primary component clearly define the neighborhood, the entry into a district. It can be signage, it can be in the architecture, in artwork, like you see being placed on the Lombardi underpass and on the storage building and mural pieces there. And gateways change your question from are we there to a statement of we have arrived. Next, streets, I like to call them green streets. We consider this a primary part of the open space, maybe the most significant component of open space. And for the last 20 years or so, we've spent a lot of time studying streets, building them, rebuilding them, tweaking them, checking all the dimensions, all the materials, all the components, and rebuilding them. We know exactly what works for pedestrians, bikes, cars, cafes, retail, and really what makes them living pieces of place. The square, the public square, of course, is traditionally the heart of any great community. Union Square is already an established destination, so that's great for kind of mapping, meeting someone in some place. But what we need to do in the future is to ensure that it's flexible and programmable, that it supports large and small events, that it has something for everyone, so that you can have a coffee from the cafe at a bench, or I can play chess with my daughter, or I can take my family for a picnic. All of those things need to be accommodated, large scale and small scale in the central square. Scale. The success of the streets, open space, and the character of Union Square depend on being immersive, kind of enveloped in the architecture and the landscape. But when you are so careful about how these spaces are created, the architecture and the elements that encroach upon them can really interfere with how they perform. So we're very careful about both the horizontal scale of the architecture as well as the vertical scale, and we'll pay attention to that here as well. And then finally, art and placemaking. Somerville has obviously a great wealth of artists and a community that patronizes and appreciates art. So you've already set up 1,000 points of detail in Union Square. I believe that places are remembered mostly for their artwork as much as any other experience. And we really like to create art pieces that are interactive and approachable, like the little girl in the fountain. And I think that really forms something that's very memorable. So hopefully this team can add the next 1,000 points of detail to Union Square.
Thanks, Tim. There's a couple development issues that we really need to tackle right out of the gates in getting development on parcel D2 and the train station going here. One of those is environmental. So I'm sure many of you know there's a contaminated site that exists there today. I'd say over the last 25 years, we've been one of the most active brownfield redevelopment companies in Massachusetts, and brownfields are essentially just contaminated sites. To highlight a few of the things we've done, we have been involved with a Superfund site in Woburn. Superfund sites are the worst of the worst, the dirtiest sites that are recognized by the EPA on a national level. We've redeveloped a Superfund site in Woburn, Mass. Actually, the movie of Civil Action that John Travolta was in was about that site. We redeveloped that into a mixed-use project of office and retail. We've developed on 2 landfill sites. And quite honestly, our territory is really 495 and in here. We're just a greater Boston company. And almost every project we work on, we have to deal with urban fill. 2 projects that we're currently dealing with urban fill on are one, our Longwood Center project in the Longwood Medical area. It's a 400,000 square foot lab building. Dana-Farber Cancer Institute is our lead tenant there. And to excavate under that building, to put parking under the building, we encountered urban fill, contaminated soil that we needed to deal with. The other project down in the lower left here is our ink blot project. That's the old Boston Herald site in the south end of Boston. It's a 6-acre site that we're essentially turning into a new neighborhood. On this site, we also encountered some asbestos in the soil and have had to deal with the EPA and the DEP. We're very familiar with what's called the Massachusetts Contingency Plan. That's a set of regulations that are put together to govern environmental issues in Mass. One of the most stringent set of regulations in the country, and we deal with them, for better or worse, on almost all of our projects.
Likewise, we've had to do the same thing at Assembly. We've encountered urban fill throughout, have undertaken a number of remediation measures, have earned brownfields tax credits, so we're very familiar with the MCP as well. I'd say the second component that we bring in terms of our development experience is really experience with the MBTA. We spent the last 5 or 6 years working with the same design team that is designing the Green Line Extension project, essentially designing the Orange Line station that's coming out of the ground at Assembly and will be open here this fall. That's the first station to be built on the center lines in 25 years. So through that process, we've developed deep relationships throughout the MBTA, not just at the top, but throughout. And so we know how the inner workings of the MBTA work, and I think understanding that and being able to hit the ground running with that team as we look to try and influence and affect some of the outcome of the Green Line station here in Union Square is going to be critically important.
We too have done a lot of work with the MBTA. Most recently, we redeveloped a Green Line station near our office in Newton. It's called Woodland Station, where we actually built a structured parking garage there in cooperation with the MBTA. And on the rest of the site, built an apartment community, 4 to 5 story apartment community right there at the station. We've actually, nearby here in Medford, by Wellington Station on the Orange Line, we've redeveloped that whole area into a large-scale mixed-use project of residential, office, retail over there. For some of you who may have seen that, that's called Station Landing. We also have developed 2 commuter rail stations in our history, one in Franklin and one in Woburn as part of the project I talked about earlier. We clearly have a lot of experience with the MBTA, and we're ready to put that to use right away here in Union Square. I'd like to transition now and talk about something that we think is one of the most exciting opportunities that exists with this project. And that's really an ability here to create a dynamic, sustainable economic development engine in Union Square that can serve Somerville extremely well for decades to come. Let me share a couple data points with you. Close to 30% of young startup entrepreneurial companies, these are tech and biotech companies today, that are located in Massachusetts are in the Kendall Square area. Rents in Kendall Square have gone up over 25% in the last few years, and that was starting from a very high base to begin with. In that same time frame, rents in the Seaport District, the Innovation District of Boston, have gone up 60 to 70%. These young entrepreneurial companies are being priced out of the areas where they've typically gone to thrive and grow. Therein lies what we think is a really great opportunity for Union Square going forward. Here's where it gets really interesting. We pulled together a slide of elements of successful innovation ecosystems around the country. The items highlighted in green are things that already exist here in Union Square or will be here shortly. Affordable housing, and this is not low-income housing, this is true workforce housing, the folks who work at these young startup companies and support them. Public transit will obviously be here with the Green Line extension. Higher education, between Harvard, MIT, Tufts, and other institutions in this area, we've got that covered. An amenity-rich environment. I think there's a fantastic base of amenities here in Union Square that exist today. Restaurants, coffee shops, fitness, culture, and we only look to enhance that with the project going forward. Skilled labor, my own wife is a great example of this. She went to Tufts for an advanced engineering degree, stayed in Somerville for a few years after graduating, and worked in Kendall Square at an engineering firm, which is actually where we met. Investors and capital sources, well, I don't think there's a lot of venture capital and private equity sources in Union Square today. There'll be plenty close to Union Square because many of them are located in Kendall Square, and they'll be able to see companies that they invest in succeed in Union Square going forward. The items in blue are even more exciting to us because those are opportunity going forward that we see here in Union Square and in the Boynton Yards area. If you ask these young companies what they really desire most, they'll tell you they want to be part of a community. They want to be part of collaborative environments with their peers. They share ideas, they share business plans, they share investors, they share legal teams, and they create this dynamic work environment where it's a hip, funky, high energy environment that they love coming to every day, and that's what they really thrive on. I think there's opportunities day one, right out of the gate in Union Square, to use some of the vacancy that exists, whether it's in the old police station, the post office building. We've actually met with the gentleman who controls that site and had a preliminary conversation. I think he's interested to work with a developer who's selected to do something creative with that building. I think opportunity abounds day one to continue to build on this innovation ecosystem that's been started at places like Ames and Boynton Yards. The other thing that these young tenants really look for is flexible real estate solutions. For the last 7 or 8 years, we've been one of the largest landlords down in the Seaport District, and we've really been part of the growth of the Innovation District down there. We have 400,000 plus square feet of property that we own down there, and we've structured over 85 different deals with tenants. And I'll tell you, it's a unique environment. The relationship between the landlord and the tenants is really much more like a partnership. The landlord needs to be willing to invest in these tenants. These tenants are often lousy credit. They're just getting their start. They need flexibility in their leases. They need to get out of their lease to either grow or shrink. Not all these companies succeed. And you need to have a landlord who recognizes that and is willing to take risk and invest in these tenants to see them succeed. The other great opportunity that exists with Boynton Yards is an ability to provide these tenants with real estate solutions throughout their life cycle. Whether it's creative space to start in, R&D space to grow in, production space, Taza Chocolate over in Boynton actually produces their product there, or even warehouse and distribution space. You have this really unique opportunity in an urban setting to provide all of that in one location in Boynton Yards, and that's rare and exciting. So that's the opportunity. A little bit of a word of warning in that I think Union Square and Boynton Yards can do phenomenally well together. I think together they're actually far better than they are apart. And there's a few key elements that need to be accomplished, design elements that we've been focused on to actually effectively meld these groups together. The first is I think the entrance to Union Square needs to be pulled back to the intersection with Webster Ave and Prospect Street. Very thoughtfully, the U-Save parcel was included as part of parcel D4, which allows you to create a new entrance into Boynton Yards right there. Let's face it, if you walk that area today, it's not all that inviting. If you walk from Union Square up into Boynton Yards, there's grade change to overcome there. There's a fence that really is a visual barrier, and it's a really cold environment. All that needs to change. If you create that new entrance there and you create a great pedestrian-friendly streetscape all the way down into Union Square, the folks who work in Boynton Yards, live in Boynton Yards, will want to walk back and forth between Union Square, and they're going to be synergistic with each other. The other item that's critical is the station itself. It really needs to communicate with Boynton Yards and serve as a gateway to Boynton Yards. And I'm concerned with the current design of the station, which in many ways turns its back on Boynton Yards. You look at this station, that is on the left there, that's the side facing Boynton Yards, it's the back of the station. You look on that picture in the upper right-hand corner, that's a fence that ties into the fence on the bridge going over into Boynton Yards. That bridge says stop. That doesn't say welcome, come into Boynton Yards. I think those elements need to be changed going forward. I think the most logical way to do that is to have a pedestrian bridge that connects directly from the station over to Boynton Yards. We talked about this in our RFQ submittal. I think that's key to when you get to the station to say, this is where you want to go. Go to Boynton Yards. It communicates equally with Boynton Yards as it does Union Square. The third piece of this, and they're all critical and work together, is you need to have a statement building in Boynton Yards that's attractive, that's a beacon that's out there that welcomes people to come to Boynton Yards. I think that building needs to be located where the Beacon Sales building is today. I think that requires a speculative investment by a development company who's willing to invest in that building. I think it needs to have the right architecture that speaks to what you want Boynton Yards to be going forward, and that's an innovative environment. And it needs to be programmed right, as innovation space, as incubator space, all the things that Boynton Yards can be great about at the end of the day. So the good news is, I think there's wild opportunity here that exists. If these things are done right, I think there's phenomenal potential for economic development to come from this project. I think equally important, if these things are not done correctly, they can serve as a real barrier to economic development from this area for a long time going forward.
So hopefully you all heard firsthand why we chose National Development to be a strategic partner for us here at Federal Realty. But more importantly, they're going to be a strategic partner for the city as we begin to craft an innovative ecosystem here in Union Square. Many of you know me in this room, and we've developed a great deal of trust over the last 10 years working together. And I think it's important for me to say we want to continue to be your partner here in Union Square. I think we believe what you believe. And I think I'd like to leave you with just the five key reasons as to why we think we bring great strengths to this opportunity. First, our capital structure. We continue to invest throughout the economic downturn, both National Development and Federal Realty. We were able to raise capital throughout 2008 all the way through today. I think having access to that capital is critically important as we move forward. Union Square, the opportunities, the evolution of Union Square is going to take time. And you need to be able to access those capital markets throughout that capital market cycle. Second is we bring a diversity of skill set. I think that we have a proven track record of success with all product types, and I think that will reflect in the various opportunities that we can create together here at Union Square.
I think as we talked about a little bit, we're also a proven catalyst for economic development, whether it's in the Seaport District or throughout our 8 million plus square foot portfolio. One of the things that I think will be a component of Boynton Yards and Union Square is a build-to-suit opportunity, working with a tenant to actually build a building specifically for them. Both federal and national have extensive experience in doing that. I also think one thing I want to spend a little bit of time on is talking about bench strength. We have 225 people right in this area today. We're local, all of our partners are local, and I think that's important at the end of the day.
Finally, we're a proven long-term partner. We conceive, we develop, and we own for the long term. When you pick up the phone 3 years, 5 years, and 10 years from now, we're going to be the ones who are going to be answering it. And we've spent a great deal of time at Assembly building relationships, trustful relationships together. And I think we've shown you all what it means to be a proven private partner, solving problems along the way, collaborating with the community, investing when times are worse. And I can promise you that we've seen from you what it means to be a solid public partner. And we really look forward to continuing that partnership as we visualize and actualize Union Square.
Thank you. So they're spot on with the timing. We're giving each team 25 minutes, but no longer to present, and preserving about 5 minutes for questions. So if there are, could the Citizens Advisory Committee identify themselves? Maybe stand up, raise your hand. Okay, so we have pretty good turnout. Are there questions from the Citizens Advisory Committee? Okay, Mimi?
I've got my same question as I had for the teams last week, which is what do you see as a challenge to fulfill the vision? And an extra added one, of your team compared to the other 9 teams, what's your weakness compared to them, and how are you going to mitigate it?
Wow, we got the extra hard question, right? Let me start with the first question. What's the greatest challenge? I think the greatest challenge in Union Square is going to be striking the right balance. There's a lot, I think we heard it earlier from Fred when he said there's a lot of masters here who have a diversity of desires that they want to achieve here in Union Square. And I think it's going to be really important that we work together as a community to decide what our values are, because everything's a trade-off. We're going to have to make value decisions and striking that right balance. I like to cook on the weekends, and Union Square, for me, is gumbo. It's not split pea soup. And we got to figure out how we mix all those right ingredients so that the flavor is just right at the end of the day. And that requires a little bit from everybody, and we got to blend that together. And I think when you think about affordable housing, when you think about the innovative economy, when you think about the art, home for artists, and you think about places for families, all that has to come together and taste right at the end of the day. So I think that's the biggest challenge is balance. So what's our biggest weakness? I haven't really thought about our weaknesses. I've been trying to focus on our strengths. I might have to turn this one over to Ed and let him actually ask this question. You've been over there thinking about it, right? I think maybe one of our greatest weaknesses, frankly, is the fact we're your partner at Assembly Road. We are, we're making a significant investment there, close to $1 billion. And if I'm you sitting in the audience, and I'm looking at the Federal Realty Investment Trust, and I'm saying, wow, we got a lot of eggs in that basket. Do we really want to put more eggs in the Union Square basket? And I think we've already tried to take steps to mitigate that. We've brought on what we think is the best local, most proven developer that is most versatile, and you heard from Ed directly his skill set when he talks about what I think is important here in Union Square, creating an innovative economy. And I think, listen, if you decide that you don't want to have all your eggs in that basket, that's clearly a decision that the city is going to make, and I can't change that. However, we're a proven partner. We've been here. We've solved problems. We solved a decade's worth of litigation. We invested, we tore down an asset that was generating north of $2 million in August of 2008. I'm not sure you could point to many other folks who would have stepped up at that moment in time and essentially demolished a $22, $25 million asset. So I think that we've shown to you the character and the fiber that we have, and hopefully that's enough that you feel like you can have confidence in putting all your eggs in this basket.
That's one of your competitors up there. Yeah. Oh.
This question is for Ed. Oftentimes we hear people criticize Wellington as a development project because it wound up being very corporate and did not have the neighborhood feel that we would like to see in Somerville. As one of the developers on that project, what would you have done differently?
I think every project is certainly unique, as we've heard from other folks here as well. I think, we've said all along, what we're standing here today and saying to everyone in this room is we're looking to make an investment in Union Square, in Somerville. You got to balance things on every project, where the market is and where there's product in the market today, and what people are looking for in a community. And so I think in Station Landing in particular, we had a blank canvas there. We had a site that was controlled by regulations in Medford and the zoning in Medford. I think in Union Square we have a totally different canvas. We have to find ways to meld things into an existing fabric here. So Don and I have spent a lot of time talking about it. in saying, how do we do that? And quite honestly, a lot of that comes back to everybody in this room. We're saying we'll roll up our sleeves, we'll put in the effort, we'll put in the time, and we'll put in a major investment. But we're also going to rely on everybody here to share your thoughts with us, the people who live, work, and play in Union Square today, to tell us what's most important. And to balance those priorities that, that Don talked about. We can't do everything here. We're not going to always have all the answers that you want to hear, but I think together we can make this, this is as unique and interesting of a project as everybody's willing to make.
So we have time for one sentence question. So come on up. But then, is the next team getting ready? Because we're going to have to transition very quickly.
Thanks for your presentation. I'm both a Union Square resident and I work with groups of residents who are trying to preserve affordability in Somerville through affordable housing and also through creating local jobs. And so we've been working with Federal Realty over in Assembly Square, and I have to say that there was a lot of reluctance to contribute to programs that would allow Somerville residents access to local jobs and to really make that a reality. And so this is a question especially for your team, but actually for all the development teams, of what's your plan to make sure that local residents have access to local jobs, and that given the real assets that you have mentioned in terms of your access to capital, how are you going to use that to make sure that, as folks said earlier, people don't get displaced from Somerville but are able to really benefit from all the opportunities that you're planning to create here in Union Square?
So, sorry, Wade, that's not a one-sentence answer, but I'm a little surprised that you would say that we were reluctant, because we just held 2 job fairs, which we've worked closely with the city of Somerville as well as the SEC. We actually met with Meredith back in January as we were looking to, actually this moment in time, when interviews would start, to ensure that we had access to all of her contacts and her database, so that we knew who was looking for jobs and we could put them and connect them as best as we could. I think there is a real commitment from Federal Realty to ensure that we're investing for the community and that the community can benefit from that. So, other than maybe spending some time with you offline to understand where your hesitation was, I'd be happy to do that, but can certainly walk you through all the things that we've done at Assembly, and frankly will continue to do.
Okay, so thank you very much. I'm going to turn it over to Ed to introduce the next team. They're getting it ready pretty quickly.
We'll give these folks just a minute to set up. I know that 9 different presentations is an awful lot of work, and we're grateful for your willingness to work with us and to review each of the 9 teams. Some of the teams we have obviously known well and we've worked with over a number of years. Others we are meeting for the first time. But I hope that the common thread that is beginning to come here is that there's a good deal of experience, but at the same point in time, there's a good deal of understanding that each of these teams have brought here in terms of where they stand in Union Square. More importantly, where we want to go. I think they've shown a good deal of imagination, as you're about to see, and a lot of them have actually been proactive in out there meeting with existing owners in the square. So we're grateful to them. The next team you are about to hear from is Union Square Station Associates, which is a partnership between Magellan Development and Misereau Financial. They are one of the teams that we are meeting for the first time. They are out of Chicago. So I want to introduce Jamie to start this off and to give you a bit of introduction as to who these folks are and what they hope to work with us on.
One concern that I have is it's just going to be converted to yet another street corner that looks like any street corner in America, and with that, lose its character.
We got a lot of people come out here. I see a lot of festivals, and maybe
maybe a little bit more shops. I mean, I don't really see too many places I would stop.
I've lived here my whole life. In my life, I moved around the block in one square. And I still live here and I still love it here. But a lot of things have changed since I was a kid.
I would be concerned that it would be developed and then I would not be able to come here. Would not be able to shop here or live here, in which case, where else do I go?
My name is Jamie Chisholm. That's me on the left. Hopefully you can see it because I'm wearing a sailor suit. That's me and my brother, my great uncle, we all called Squid, and my grandmother at their house at 153 Lowell. My grandmother, Regina, grew up on Prospect Street and taught the Pope School. My grandfather, Bob Haley, grew up in Homer Square and taught the high school for decades. My family's been in Somerville for more than 100 years. It's where they chose to settle when they came to America from the Azores and from Ireland, and it's where I was born. My role in this pretty big team is community engagement. It's making sure that the voices are heard, they're taken seriously, the community is listened to. And that's why I'm speaking first, because while there are a lot of important, detailed, complex things to talk about, to our team, it's the community that comes first. And if I'm being totally honest, my grandfather, he just loved Somerville. He just absolutely loved it. It shaped his life, and in turn it shaped mine. And I think the young person left, but I want to ensure that the things that my grandfather loved about Somerville, the diversity, the inclusivity, how welcoming, how open it was, that those aspects, the things he treasured about the city, are honored and respected, whoever is chosen in this process, and that's my pledge to you on a personal level. And I want to turn over now to the head of our team, Jim Lowenberg.
Thank you, Jamie. I'm from Chicago. That's either a blessing or a curse. But fortunately, in my experience, work experience, I've had the opportunity to develop throughout the United States major projects. And Somerville is a unique situation. I think that movie clip that we saw at the beginning expresses it all. We want to make sure that those people that were in that clip are in Somerville at Union Square 2, 5, 10 years from now. That's the goal of our team. We've constructed our team in a way that listens. We see ourselves as facilitators. We want to get community involvement. We want to react to community and design a development that speaks to those people. They all have different constituency, and we understand that there are lots and lots of constituencies here. So our goal, and we hope that we can convey to you in this presentation, the way we created this team to respond to this goal of creating the Somerville that you saw in the clip that we had. I'm going to turn it over to Greg Karczewski. Greg is going to be the general manager of the development for us, and he's going to tell you about himself and his plans.
Thank you very much, Jim. It's a real pleasure to be here with you today. In my role as project director, I see my role taking on three very important priorities. One is to ensure that I'm able to lead this tremendous and talented team that we have to help deliver on your vision for Union Square. Secondly, I want to make sure that we're able to create a project that this community collectively can be very proud of for decades to come. And third, I want to make sure that we're a good partner in the process. My role here today is to give you some sense of what our team is about, the talents that we bring to the table, and also our credentials that make us very relevant for taking on this very important project in Somerville. Whenever we start out with a complex, large-scale project, like the project that you're contemplating in Somerville, the first thing we do is focus on team and developing the right team and a customized team for the particular project at hand. And that's been very important, and probably more important for this particular project because there's no formula for developing in the manner that's been contemplated. So I'm excited to share with you today the very customized team that we've developed to help address the things that are important to you. As a starting point, I want to talk about partnership, because we truly envision this as a partnership between our development team and you as a community. And that partnership, as noted up on the screen, is the Partnership for Union Square Station. And what that means is that from our end of the partnership, we're going to bring our talents, our skills, our understanding of the development process and the market and design and all the other great things that you're going to hear about today. And from you, the various members of the community, we need your input to start, but we need your passion and your energy and your involvement, because that's really what's going to create a lasting legacy for Union Square. To further describe our team, our development team includes both local and national perspectives. Jim from Magellan Development and myself from Mesro Financial have partnered with a local development services group, Stantec. One of the main partners there is Drew Leff. Drew, are you in the audience? Drew has a 40-year career here in Boston, working on real estate development initiatives, working specifically with communities like you. In fact, he was involved in some early studies specifically focused on Union Square, as well as the Joy Street Studio project. In addition to the local perspective that Drew and his team will bring, and the national and fresh perspective that we'll bring from our experiences in Chicago and elsewhere in the country, we've complemented that with a team of primarily local partners. And it's very focused on the things that are most important to this project: community engagement, transit advisory. Deborah Fennick, who's a member of our team and also a Somerville resident, Deborah's right over here, is designing the station, the Green Line station that's going to be a part of the Union Square development. Sustainability and engineering. Stantec, we're blessed to have Stantec on the team, and they bring a tremendous amount of experience around sustainability to the project. In fact, they're one of the most progressive firms in the country focused on going beyond the LEED system and looking at net zero buildings. We're excited about bringing that intellectual capital to bear on this project. And then you can see we have representation from other key members of our development team from throughout the Boston area. On the back of your placemat is an organizational chart of our entire team to give you some perspective about it. We were very excited about the opportunity to be here with you today and the potential of working with you on this project, because when we read about the project and further understood the criteria, then matched it against our core competency and the things that we have grown to do very well over time, which is build communities and serve in a master development role, we realized that we were a great fit for the project. And as evidenced by our response in the RFQ to the 16 standards that you put forward, we believe that we demonstrated that we're highly advantageous in all 16 of those categories. Now I want to highlight some of the things about our team that are probably especially relevant to you. If I was sitting in the audience, one of the main questions for me would be, can this team deliver? Can you execute the project? What's on the screen here is a high-rise office building that we completed in Chicago, as well as a high-rise building that's a mix of hotel and retail and residential. These are not the type of scale that we're thinking about for Union Square, to be very clear. But it is indicative of our ability to develop and execute at a very large scale, very complex projects. We've also done it at different scales: urban context, semi-urban context. We have, as a group, constructed and developed over $10 billion worth of development in our history. And what I mean by that is we've conceived of the project, we've developed the project, we've financed the project, we've constructed the project, and we've operated the project. That should give you great assurance that for the 2 million plus square feet that you've contemplated for this project, that we have the capacity to be a great partner and deliver on the project itself. The other thing that I think is important is to note that we've had experience in a variety of uses that are very important, or have been identified by you as a community as being important to the Somerville Union Square project. Retail, mixed use, affordable housing, public spaces, historic hotel, office of different shapes and sizes, and community centers, cultural centers, places where the arts can flourish. We're adept at implementing all of these product types into mixed-use environments. I mentioned earlier that we have a core competency in master development and community building. I wanted to take a second to demonstrate that via a project that we developed in Chicago called University Village. It's a 52-acre project that surrounds the University of Illinois campus, just southwest of the city. The project included a mix of uses, residential, retail, affordable housing, as well as educational uses. But I think there's a couple of things about this project that are especially relevant to the opportunity here at Somerville. One is that the project had 900 different types of housing units, or 900 housing units of various types. And then included in that was almost 200 units of affordable housing. Not only did we build the affordable housing, but we developed an innovative financing structure. We're able to help bridge the affordability gap for individuals that were interested in that housing. Additionally, the project included over 21 historic buildings or facades that we repurposed into residential or commercial spaces. We've also demonstrated that community engagement can drive success. In another project, Lakeshore East, which is a large master plan project in the heart of the city in Chicago, between Lake Michigan and Michigan Avenue, that included over 5,000 residential units and several hundred square feet of commercial space. Our team met with 150 different community organizations and hosted over 400 community meetings to build consensus about what was important to the community in completing the development. The end result was a unanimous approval by the Plan Commission, consensus from the community, and ultimately City Council approval. We're very proud of reaching that milestone, but we're even more proud of the end result, which is a vital, vibrant community in the heart of Chicago. You can see the annual Halloween parade going through one of our great public spaces. The project was also recognized by an international award for master planning. We also know that transit and infrastructure are essential to the success of the development. And we have experience in both of those areas. In another project that we did called Glenview, which was a redevelopment of a naval air station, 1,100 acres, just outside of Chicago. We converted the naval air station into 2 million plus square feet of residential and office, and commercial uses, excuse me. It included over $185 million worth of infrastructure improvements and ultimately created 6,000 jobs. At the heart of the development is a metro station, so it's a transit-oriented development. It also was recognized by a trade organization, Urban Land Institute, as an Award for Excellence winner. Last but certainly not least, we believe that the details and programs are the key to lasting vibrancy for Union Square and all large-scale developments, really. What does that mean? It means paying attention to programming public spaces. It's a public art. Here's an example of a James Turrell installation that we did at our University Village project. Focus on the fine points of streetscape. And then economic development. How can we take the opportunity that you have with the addition of the Green Line station and the great seeds of innovation that are happening in your community and amplify that, right? Create a more vibrant base of economic development and give those companies an opportunity to grow within your community. Those are all, and last but not least, sustainable approaches. We developed over 3 million square feet of LEED certified buildings. I mentioned earlier that our hope here is with our collaboration with Stantec that we can continue to push the envelope in the way we think about sustainability as it relates to this particular development. With that, I'd like to introduce David Dixon from Stantec. He was formerly with Goody Clancy. He's going to lead up a discussion about our urban design philosophy and talk about the advantages of this unique design team that we've put together for the project.
Thank you, and I'm going to answer. Okay, thank you. So it is really a privilege and an honor to be here, and thank you. And I'm going to speak in headlines because time is short. Look forward to questions. So, one of the things that I find fascinating is that Union Square is lots of different places, some like 5 feet from each other. But one thing that Union Square is, no matter where we look, is it's a wonderful place, it's diverse, it has variety, and it is fundamentally fragile in an era in which people and dollars are moving into cities at an unprecedented pace. And when we and our good colleagues talk about bringing 2+ million square feet to Union Square, those square feet are not going to land lightly. And I think it's worth thinking back to the answers that a couple of folks gave when we were going around videoing questions. I was saying, please ask them to say something interesting, but that was not necessary. They said wonderful things. And if I had to cartoon what they said, the first fellow said something to the effect of, this is all good and fine, but if it's not for me, what's the point? And the second fellow said, okay, great, but I want places that really speak to my life, that are about me. And the third wonderful woman said, I've lived here all my life, and don't take it away from me. I want it to be a place that's familiar, maybe different, but familiar. And I think we have a fundamental obligation to answer those questions in the right way and make this 2 million square feet about community building and not about creating yet one more branded sort of generic, very cool place that is happening basically across America today. So how are we going to do that? In a minute we're going to talk about how we're going to do it with design and our 4 terrific architects and the variety they're going to bring, but I want to talk about the first thing we're going to do, which is planning with everybody, making this a community-based process that is about creating a great place, but social and economic and environmental value. It's about a place, folks used to tell us this, boy do I know it now, if it doesn't include us, it's not about us. That means we really need to create with you and be partners with you in a really genuine community-based planning process. And that means that, this is to a paraphrase of Jan Gehl, who is my favorite urban designer in life, which basically says, you start with people, and then place, and then building. So we're going to, here, people are going to stand for planning. So we're going to talk about that and how that sets the stage for the places and the buildings we'll create. And then something that 4 people held this banner up to me at a meeting about 2 years ago, and I just loved it, and it seems to me to be immensely true of what you would tell us at Union Square right from the start, probably have. So how would we work? Well, this team would go out and interview people, and I mean 200 or 300 of you, so that you, and by people I mean organizations, so you get a gut feel for us and we get a gut feel for you as the precondition of building a trustful working relationship together. And then we stay in touch. There are, I don't know, I tried to make a list. I got to about 50, and then I'm sure it's too short, of stakeholder groups with a genuine interest and genuine advocacy, a genuine advocacy mission around Union Square that we need to stay in touch with during this process. And then we have to remember that there is a lot of opportunity here that does begin with the physical place, because we all love Union Square, but it is not a perfect place. We love it for its imperfection, possibly. In fact, in many ways, it's a very fractured environment, which I did again, never mind. All right, it's a fractured environment, worse than, not quite as bad as I just made it. And sort of part of our job is a wonderful opportunity, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to rebuild it with you. Because there are places that are, this is about enhancement, Summer Vision tells us, but there are places that are about preservation, there are about places that are about genuine enhancement, and then there are places, you can see this, that are most definitely about transformation to accomplish the kind of goals. So how do we use this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to make sure that we do this kind of community building, not some sort of social displacement with 2 million square feet. And we have a market, we have land, and if we have a really willing partner in everybody here, I think we can do something great. But we're going to only do this if we talk about real issues. 2 million square feet with 12.5% affordable housing probably is going to cause, well, let me just say, will raise affordability issues. One of the things we really look forward to doing with you, we did it recently in Central Square and actually in Kendall Square, is work with folks to figure out what are the trade-offs we want to make to raise that number, to broaden it, so it includes workforce, low and middle income families, for example. How do we want to address, well, let me keep going here for a second. Let's look at some of the choices that we have. So, how do we use this 2 million square feet to give ourselves the right choices? For example, we could create a wonderful sort of civic heart here in Union Square in front of the CC community television, maybe with a glass room that's a community room that belongs to everyone, something they did in Chattanooga, which is wonderful. Or we can create a much more peaceful space where people, in their own way, determine how to sort of come together. We can redevelop and preserve in ways that tell lots of stories. For example, behind those umbrellas could be all kinds of things. They'll look the same. They could be franchises, which are probably about as welcome as the towers that Grace showed you earlier. Or this could be a place where we really work with the community to develop innovative trade-offs so that we did what we also did in Central Square, develop mechanisms for keeping long-time retailers there at low rent. You can do more business, but if you depend on that rent, you need that rent. We've done a lot of planning for innovation districts. And this is set up to be one because it will have the quality of life, it will have nearby housing, it will have a range of affordabilities, but we need, or it would be great then maybe to look at buildings like this, which you can't quite see, anyway, to basically say, can we renovate that into low-cost space so that these ingredients come together with the magic of affordability for folks who are makers and entrepreneurs. So on this note, I'd like to introduce our wonderful design team to sort of bring this to life in all its diversity.
I'm David Hassin of Hassin & Associates Architects from Boston. I'm David Tabankian. I work for Hassin & Associates Architects as well.
Nader Tom, and I'm one of the principals of NADA, and also a teacher at MIT, where I currently am the head of the department.
I'm Kate Faulkner, and I'm a partner with Nader Tribe in Atlanta.
My name is Eric Howler. I'm with Howler Union Architecture.
Nathan Yoon, I'm with Howler Union Architecture in Boston.
I know I'm speaking for all of us when I say how excited we all are to have a chance to work together, and how ironic it is that it took a developer from Chicago to actually make that happen.
Looking back, we've all known each other for about 20 years now, whether in school as students or practicing in the same neighborhood or teaching together. And this seems to be an opportunity to put our best talents together and study a place together. One of the great opportunities, it seems, of this place is to engage its history, to rediscover its transformation over these last 20 years that we've all known, and begin to instigate the discussion with the very people that care about it.
It's an amazing opportunity to create a series of sites and venues for public art from the local community here. Somerville has an incredibly active art community, and I think this project should be an opportunity to create sites for those artists.
And the idea of, Cambridge and Somerville are clearly hotbeds of innovation, and the idea that some of that spirit could be in this place is also very exciting. What services would the neighborhood like to have that aren't already here, so that they don't have to drive somewhere to get something, they can walk to the square?
The place can feel like you're amongst cars, primarily. It's a place for cars, it's not really a place for people.
A lot happens in this location, and a lot of different things at different parts of the year, and the community really uses what they have to get the most value out of it. And the idea of enhancing this in some way, giving it more flexibility, letting it be more of a stage for even different kinds of events, I think is really exciting opportunity.
The timing is on our side, a lot similar to what we talked about with the notion of the farmer's market. I think there's a real respect now for the maker space. I mean, they're popping up all over the place.
While new construction needs to learn to be resilient, flexible, and transformative, in a way to respond to the existing culture of the place.
And not predictable, not responding to the exigencies of, what a national retailer needs, but something that feels that it connects into the neighborhood and is going to create these kinds of opportunities.
Thank you. Great.
Thank you very much. We're grateful to have had an opportunity to present to you
humbled by the opportunity. It's a singular opportunity. This project, this opportunity to work with you, the community, to give you something authentic and original, which is what Union Square is. We've done lots of things over the years. We've never had a singular opportunity like this. This is not for the faint of heart. You're talking about $1 billion to a $2 billion development. Somebody who's done lots of big things. We have. I want to close in telling you this. I believe and I know that in real estate, past experience is every indicator of future experience. We want your support, but we need your enthusiastic collaboration. And if we're selected, we promise we shall not disappoint you. Thank you for your time.
We're getting wrapped up a little. Okay, well, great. Thank you so much for the presentation. Are there questions from the Citizens Advisory Committee? We had 2 last time. That was really nice. Mimi, you got a new kind of question? No, okay. Whatever kind you want. So.
I have my same question that I'm going to ask all of the teams about what's your weakness as a team and what do you see as the challenge for working in Union Square?
Thank you. I'm going to go with the hard one first. We have no weakness. That's why we're here. This is what we do. It's our core competency, and we know we can execute. Richie, do you want to handle what's the other portion of the question?
What was it? Our strengths or our weaknesses? I'm sorry.
Your weakness.
Greatest challenge?
Your greatest challenge and your weakness.
Well, since you covered the weaknesses, we haven't found them yet. We do this. This is our core competency. It's our sweet spot. We love working with people. We love working with communities, and the proof is in the pudding. Our greatest challenge is to have your enthusiastic cooperation, because this is about you. We want each and every one of you, when we're done, excuse me, to know Union Square as you knew it before. That is our challenge. Forget the $1 billion, the $1.5 billion. We want Ricky's. We want to set up a program where our contractor has to pull from a pool of Somerville residents that are qualified before he hires anywhere else. We do low income, we do affordable housing with our own second mortgages. We've been there, we've done it. Our biggest challenge is your unstinting enthusiasm and collaboration, because that's what Union Square is about. That's why we named the team US2, Union Square 2. It's you together on the team in a partnership with us. I truly believe that.
Sure. Committee member, and then we'll take one quick one from the audience, and then we'll move on.
So far, the 4 other firms that have come in and 4 other teams that have come in and pitched have touted Assembly Row, North Point, and of course, using Kendall as a model. This was the first presentation when I heard it was only touched upon Central Square. So I was wondering what the experience was among the team with Central Square at all, or whether I was mishearing that.
Well, first of all, our good colleagues here have a great deal of experience they brought from around the country, but we recently finished planning with the good folks of Central Square for the city of Cambridge and tackled many of the same issues: affordability, but let me say diversity of retail as well as people, how to bring a range of economic diversity, and what were the trade-offs around height or density or other benefits. How can we get money into a training program for kids from Area 4 in Cambridge, as some of you may know, who stare at all this wealth that's being formed and can't touch it, or it doesn't touch their lives. So the idea was to give folks a chance to plan at a time when the economy is rushing toward Union Square and Central Square, to say, how do we manage this for our benefit? How do we turn this value into things that really build our community? And that was what it's about. And since we all like to say, check our references, I'd love for you to go talk to the folks at Central Square.
And I think very important is, and I think David just highlighted it, is that development, to be successful, is a series of trade-offs. You can get anything you want, but you may have to give something to get it, and that's very important. You know, nothing in this world comes free, and you can afford to do the things that you were talking about, like affordable housing, but you may have to give someplace else. So that's where the community is involved. The community must answer those questions. We can't answer them. We can guide you, we can make recommendations to you, but you must give us the guidance of what you want to end up with. And I think that's the true test of development.
Thank you. Jane, come on up.
I have two issues I'd like to raise. The first is quite mundane. I don't know whether anyone in this room has yet raised the issue of the fact that Union Square is an urban watershed. That's a very difficult problem to deal with, and I'm wondering, I'm curious whether anyone has discussed that with you, talked about it, the challenges that it represents, the potential pitfalls. That's one thing. The other thing I want to say, and I think this is much more painful and difficult, particularly given your the importance that you place on public participation and enthusiastic cooperation. I'm very interested that David Dixon is a member of your team, because David Dixon has a long history with development projects in Somerville. And when he started to work at Assembly Square, those of us who were deeply involved and concerned about the square from the community did our homework, and we understood from the research that we did that David Dixon was a truly outstanding urban planner. There just wasn't any doubt about it. But what did David Dixon do when he started working for the city of Somerville? He rubber stamped essentially the plans of the then mayoral administration, Dorothy Kelly Gay, for a project for the development of Assembly Square in a way that was absolutely antithetical to the best interests of this city. And David Dixon disappeared, and 4 lawsuits later, all won by the community group that really was very deeply interested in the development of Assembly Square in a way that would get mass transit and that would get walkable streets and that would, try to at least begin to develop the office space that the city really needs to take itself out of welfare from the state. We're making some progress, but the current developers still saw fit to want to put a single-story supermarket in the former IKEA spot. So I think I want to say 2 things. One is that what we need from you is honesty. What we need from you is honesty. I agree, it's a wonderful site. We need to know from you, even such things as, is 2 million square feet of development really feasible? What about the city, the difficulties with the city's tax base and the need for more office building? One of the things that we've discovered in our years of working with developers at Assembly Square is that it's very difficult. Okay, developers have a hard time changing their business models. So I'm curious, how important have office and research and development spaces been to your vision of yourselves as developers? How familiar are you with that? How able are you to meet the challenge of a truly mixed-use and sustainable community?
So just 1 sec. Can the next team start to set up, please? So
I feel like my team's credibility rides on me for a minute, so I just want to speak, and certainly spent a lot of time with Wig. I would ask you to think back to the history of Assembly Square. The first time I met Assembly Square is when I was invited, actually might have been by Wig, I'm not sure, to come to a forum in Somerville, where I had the privilege of saying this is not a place to put big box retail, which was the assumption at that time. This is a place to create a great walkable environment. I then, to my great amazement, was hired by an investor, not a developer, an investor who wanted to turn the site into something that would be different than it was and try and solve some of the problems. But this was an investor who had an IKEA lease that he felt he couldn't move, and some other things he couldn't move. And so our job was to create a walkable, lively, mixed-use environment in a way that I guess I'm very proud of for that time. I would love to think of that as a period over time, as Somerville has evolved and we've all evolved, that has led toward a much better outcome, whether it's not my job because the authors just spoke. But I guess I feel like part of a process and somebody who had a chance to work with many of you, and I hope in a fully honest way, that helped move a process forward in a way that had a process that had a long road to go, but had come a long way. So.
And just if you've got any comments on the mix of use or the water.
The only thing I want to state is that we have a website and we have a telephone number, and for those of you who did not participate tonight, we wish you would contact us with your questions, and we will try and answer them as fully as we can without the constraints of time. So thank you for the opportunity to present to you.
Sure. Thank you very much. And you know, the water is an issue there, and I think Ed talked about the infrastructure earlier on. Okay. But we gotta move.
As we all know, Somerville is an urban area, and being an urban watershed, there are water quality issues. Somerville originated as a combined sewer community, so if you're going to be adding volume, it's an opportunity with redevelopment to get that rainwater out of the combined sewer system so it doesn't have impacts in the older infrastructure downstream, so we don't impact the downstream parts of the community. So we look at that sustainability and to improve that water quality but not have negative impacts in the surrounding areas. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Oh, thank you so much, especially those of you who travel. We really appreciate everybody's effort. Thanks, Drew.
Thanks, Wade. We want to give these next folks the full allotment of time. Unfortunately, we ran a little bit short at the SRA meeting, so I know you want to hear from them. Many times when there is a gathering of family and friends, there's a prize that's given to the person who has to come the longest distance. By that measure, these folks win. Gurney Needland is a firm that has been in Boston for about 4 or 5 years now, I want to say. They've been a major factor on the West Coast, specifically in places like Portland, Oregon, San Francisco, and Los Angeles, and now they are very active here in the Boston market. So I'd like to introduce Kelly Seido and the rest of his team from Gurney Needland. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kelly Seido. I'm the president of Gurney Needland Development Company. I want to say thank you. It's a real honor for us to be here this evening. It's a big honor for us to be considered for the role of master developer for Union Square. I'd like to start our presentation this evening by giving you a brief overview of who we are and why we're here. So Gurney Needland is a Portland, Oregon-based real estate company. We have over 15 years of successful development experience across the country, including here, as Ed mentioned. We have deep experience in planning, financing, and delivering true mixed-use projects that include retail, office, and residential housing. These statistics here show that, like several of our competitors, we built thousands of residential units over the years, we've built millions of square feet of commercial space, and we've invested billions of dollars into our projects. I would like to point out that we do have several discretionary equity funds that we manage, which gives us the financial capacity to execute a project like Union Square. And I should also note that we are known nationally, or recognized nationally as leaders in sustainability. We have an extensive portfolio of properties that are both highly sustainable and LEED certified. So we are an experienced developer, and if selected, we'll be a trusted partner for you and the SRA. We will draw upon our past success in stitching together new development with the fabric of existing neighborhoods and preserving and enhancing all the great qualities that exist to make them a better place. That is essentially what we do. It's what we love to do. It's who we are, it's our philosophy. In fact, it's our core values for our company. And they're all articulated in a thing that we call the principles of place. And through the course of the presentation, we'll tell you about what all those values are and why they're relevant to you and to Union Square. But for now, it's because of those values that we think that we're uniquely qualified to be your partner and to help you deliver the vision for Union Square. And that's why we and our team are here, and we're so excited to be part of this process. So, let me introduce our team. That's part of us pictured there. There's a number of us here tonight, and they're actually all already standing. How about if you raise your hands? Stand or raise your hands. Far too many to name everybody individually, but it's all a top-notch group of professionals that are best in class. Many of them have deep ties to Somerville, both professionally and personally, and we're all excited to be a part of this project and try and help make the vision happen for Union Square. I'd also like to introduce several of the team members from Gertie Edlund. So Jill Sherman, can you raise your hand? Jill's Vice President of Development. She'll actually be the primary person in charge of this project, and she'll speak extensively a little bit later here. Standing next to her is Sarah Zahn, Development Manager that works with Jill. And standing next to her, Jenny Keller, who's the Director of Marketing. And finally, Matt Edlund is the Director of Acquisitions. He works with me extensively here in this region, particularly to help identify projects. So that's your team. That's our team, and if selected, it's your team. And we're here to express our sincere excitement about this. I guess with that, I'd like to introduce John Lannon. John is with the architectural team in Adding. John is a Somerville resident, and John is somebody that we have had the great pleasure of working extensively with during our time here in the Boston area. So John?
Thanks, Kelly. We're staying, I don't have to use this. So as Kelly said, I've been a Somerville resident for 15 years now, and I'm very much invested in Somerville. And nervous. I'm more nervous than I was at the SRA, because I know a lot of you, and you may not recognize me because I'm in a suit, but anyway, so I've had the good fortune to have worked with Kelly and the rest of the Gertie Edlund team for 3 years now, exclusively on large urban mixed-use projects in Boston. And you know, this is a hard business, and one of the hardest things to come by is our relationships and friendships. And we've transcended our relationship to true friendship throughout the 3-year process. And so when the Union Square opportunity came to us, or to me, I was thrilled to think that I have a partner that I would be like proud to have in Somerville, in the city I live in and that I trust. So I've become great friends to a real degree. Like Matt Edlund and I text each other like 13-year-olds. And so I trust these folks to be in our city and to do the right thing. And with that said, I want to introduce my new friend, Jill Sherman, who's going to talk to you quite a bit about their experience in other communities.
Thanks, John. I want this. I want this. Okay, great. Let's see if I hit the right button. Great. So again, I'm Jill Sherman. I would be the director of the project. In addition to the experience that Gertie Edlund has that Kelly talked about in terms of mixed-use projects, transit-oriented development, and sustainability, we do have a real focus on public-private partnerships at the company, and that is what I exclusively, along with Sarah, spend my time working on. So I have worked with a number of jurisdictions, cities, redevelopment agencies, transit authorities, nonprofits, as well as both public and private institutions of higher education. So this is really, where I like to be and the types of projects that get me excited with real estate development. It also means that I'm very familiar with the kind of collaborative approach that's required for this kind of project, and how important it is that we be able to listen and be able to incorporate the opinions of diverse groups as we think through some of the choices that'll be on the table during any development project. And it's not just that we do that engagement because we think that we have to, or that's what's expected. We actually think that on the other side a better project comes out of it. So by incorporating these different opinions and having people poke a little bit at some of our ideas that we might bring to the table, we actually end up bringing something better for everybody. Those are our principles of place that Kelly alluded to. This is what guides our approach to development and any project that we undertake. And what I'm going to do with the rest of my time, and we are going to try to keep it moving so that we do have time for questions, is I'm going to go through our 10 principles of place and actually show how we have incorporated or used these principles and how it affects real projects that we have completed. So you'll be seeing essentially photos, and I'll be talking a little bit about some of our completed development projects over the last 15 years. I also want to point out that we noticed as we looked at our principles of place and as we read Summer Vision, that there's some similarities here that I think are important, and I think this recognition of what's here already and the ability to enhance and build on it and stitch perhaps new development and new uses in with what's here and recognizing that diversity and being able to celebrate it is something that we're really interested in. So build community. So great buildings do more than just create beautiful architectural artifacts, things that are going to be around for a long time. And granted, we take that very seriously because we recognize that our work, we're building 100-year buildings. They're going to be here for the long term. But what's really important is creating great places that knit themselves into the surrounding community and that are embraced by the community. So one way that we do this is we incorporate community space into our buildings. So these are spaces for residents or building tenants to meet and interact, but we also look for ways to bring the rest of the community into our buildings as well. We also spend a fair amount of time working on some what I would call very high community impact projects. So these are projects in partnership with nonprofits where a building is in service of their mission, so where they can perform the mission that they provide to the community, as well as both affordable and workforce housing projects that we have been involved in. Creating inviting spaces. So some of the photos here, most of them are the Brewery Blocks, which is a 5-block redevelopment in Portland that we worked on. And you can see it has a number of the kinds of elements that you start to think about with Union Square, preserving existing buildings, incorporating transit-oriented development, and creating places that people want to hang out and come back to and where they feel comfortable. And one of the things we like to think about is what we call third spaces. So it's not quite the private realm where you enter the building and it's meant to be a place perhaps more for the tenants, or the public realm, which is of course, you know, the sidewalk where the public is, but these kind of in-between or third spaces, like you can see on the top right, if I can use the pointer. Anyway, it's on the top right. Well, yeah, you're right. Where you see what essentially is the entryway to our building. So technically a private space on private property, but we've had the retail spill out and it's actually become sort of an impromptu community meeting area. Minimizing carbon footprint and energy dependence. We talked a little bit about sustainability in our track record. We have done LEED buildings at a very high level, 13 platinum and 44 gold, but more than just the LEED scorecard, we really are interested in pushing the envelope and being creative on the sustainability front, and we've got many examples in our project. We have a lot of firsts, things that we were willing to try that we hadn't done before. We certainly learned lessons along the way that we've been able to take with us as we've moved on to other projects. For example, at the Brewery Blocks, we had some experience with some shared infrastructure, so both an energy plant as well as viewing parking as a shared infrastructure. So that project actually incorporates one large parking garage below several blocks that allows for really shared parking and helps to reduce the total number of parking spaces that you need. Also, I'd like to mention at South Waterfront, which was another multi-block redevelopment of an urban brownfield, we had a bioreactor which is treating all of the water from one of our buildings. So it's a large medical office facility, and what it's doing is it's taking all the gray and black water, it's treating it, it's reusing it in the building to flush all the toilets and for all the irrigation and mechanical systems, and then the water is actually cleaner than the river, so we can send all the water that we don't need for the building into the river, and so we're literally off the sewer system in that case. Connecting people and buildings to nature. So as I don't have to tell you, Somerville is a very dense city. It's probably one of the densest cities in the nation, and that makes it extremely important to find connections to green space and nature so that people have that connection and kind of relief that we all need. It's really a health and wellness and well-being question. So you do have some green spaces here. We think you need more, and we think it's important that as part of the redevelopment, it's really thoughtfully planned how to integrate additional green space and opportunities for people to get out. Encourage transportation alternatives. So almost 100% of our projects are transit-oriented development. We particularly look for sites that have great transit connections, both because we believe that they also tend to have other attributes like diverse communities that are interesting to us, but also because we think that in the long term, reducing the dependence on the automobile is really critical and will actually make our projects more successful and more valuable. So we look to promote a variety of transit options and opportunities. So that could include including car sharing spaces in parking garages, great bike rooms that have a place to clean your bike and to fix your bike up. The goal here is to make biking more convenient and easier than getting into your car so that it's actually, people see it as an option. In the brewery blocks, that project really, a linchpin to the success of that project was the streetcar, and you've seen that in some of the photos of the project that I've been showing. And also in South Waterfront, that's probably the most multimodal community and redevelopment project that we've been involved in, and there was streetcar, a great bike and pedestrian path that was created and extended along the river so that connecting people to nature in addition to the transit option, and also light rail has come, and there's also an aerial tram. Crafting the first 30 feet. So I think people probably recognize that when you actually experience a building, you very rarely see it the way you do when you look at somebody's rendering or even a photograph of a building that where you're looking at the whole building from a bird's eye view or from 2 streets away. You really experience the building as a pedestrian on the sidewalk, and you experience that first 30 feet. So we really focus on that, making it sure the buildings are human scale so that people feel comfortable and not overwhelmed by the building. So we've done this by creating retail frontages that have a lot of diversity to them, so allowing retailers to kind of do their own entrance rather than to try to create something that's more uniform. And also curating who those retailers are and making sure they both meet kind of needs for the neighborhood and create places, again, that people want to come back to. Inspire communities with art. So bringing art into our projects is something that we do pretty much on every project. We don't do it the same way in every project. It's really driven by the local community and the local arts organizations in the particular community where the project is located. So for example, we had a condominium project in downtown Portland where the site happened to be adjacent to an existing art glass gallery, and that art glass gallery also had an art glass factory on the other side of town where they actually were producing and manufacturing this incredible art glass. And we were able to partner with them to incorporate art glass in both the lobby of the building as well as the exterior, which enhanced the beauty of the building, created some interest, created a story. Who was the artist? Where are they from? Why did they choose to do what they did? What does it mean to them? But also provides a touch point for people. So it really connects people. It gives them something to talk about when they see art. So we've done this also in our Boston projects. We're using a lobby of one of our buildings in Fort Point that's really serving as an art gallery. So we're going to have consistent and ongoing installations. So again, it makes the space more interesting, lively, engaging, vibrant. It brings people in. It gives the people there something to connect over and creates, I think, an authenticity of experience for people and something that they feel great ownership in. Make 20-minute living real. So the idea here is that you should be able to do the kind of things you have to do, like, get your groceries and your dry cleaning and your hardware, and the things that you want to do, like go out to dinner or grab a cup of coffee or take a class or go to work, all within a 20-minute commute, ideally walking, biking, transit from where you live. So clearly, one of the things that's critical here is that you have that mix of uses and amenities in your community that you can actually get to within that 20-minute radius. And I think one of the things for Union Square that others have brought up, and of course was in the RFQ and the information, is that jobs housing balance and the desire to have more jobs here, both from an economic development and improving the property tax base perspective, as well as this ability to actually be able to walk to your job or bike easily to your job. Whoops. Integrating schools and neighborhoods. So schools serve as a kind of community center, or should serve as a kind of community center in neighborhoods. And when we talk about schools, we really mean education more broadly, so not just public schools or colleges or universities, but really the idea that throughout their lives people are looking for opportunities for education in different kinds of ways. And we are really interested in looking at how we incorporate that into the projects and neighborhoods that we get involved in. And I think, something that we've done on projects that I think would be interesting to explore here is, we've worked with schools and been able to get kids, whether at the university level or high school level, or even younger, engaged in our projects. So in other words, if they're doing something in their class on sustainability and they're learning about sustainability, as we get to the point in the project where we're talking about those issues or perhaps implementing a particular green building tool, can we have those students as part of the process? And finally, preserve symbols that matter. So this gets to preserving buildings, both parts of buildings sometimes and sometimes whole buildings. We've done a lot of adaptive reuse and historic preservation. We really like those buildings. They are the character to a neighborhood, and as you know, when you do a lot of new development, figuring out how to get that character and that fine grain is something that's very critical, and having buildings that you can save and you can incorporate into the new development, it really helps to, I think, achieve that goal. As I said, we've done a lot of historic renovations with buildings that both are already on the National Register or that we put on the National Register. We've also used historic tax credits in a lot of cases in order to facilitate the renovation of those projects as a financial tool. So that's enough about us. Now we're going to talk a little bit about you and some of the things that we've been thinking about as we've been thinking about your project. And I am going to turn it over to...
I want to introduce Tim Love, who a lot of you know from UTL. We're going to talk a bit about ideas for Union Square moving forward. 5 minutes. So we've seen a lot of maps throughout this process, and we've heard a lot of things like disposition blocks. This for me was a map that I made, that we collectively made, but there's a lot of me in it. And it's a map of human experience. And really Union Square is exactly that. It's a catalog of human experience. And this is what we want to preserve, and this is what we want to carry forward. But we want to use enhancement of the human experience as a simple gauge for all of our design proposals. So that's the litmus test before we, when we talk to the community, we don't want to talk about edges and nodes. We want to limit our use of the word juxtaposition. We want to talk about what's really going to happen in Union Square. So we're going to use vehicles like this to communicate to people that express real ideas of real people who live and work in Union Square. With that, I want to turn it over to Tim. We'll talk about some other stuff.
Yeah, one of the things that I think is important, and we heard some of the comments with some of the other presentations, is that you want to phase this project so while you're doing the parcels, you don't in any way upset the ecology of the culture and the place that you have now. And so being very careful that, that Union Square is enhanced through the process and not changed by a different set of values, let's say. And that has to do, first of all, with looking at the project a little bit like cultural anthropologists, both insiders and half outsiders and people from Portland to understand the values. But it also matters, finally, for the new stuff, how it's integrated and actually the scale of it and what it looks like. And I think it's also very important for us as we think about and test the scale of development, how it works with the proposed streetscape improvements, and how we test the resulting patina of what we do, that we proceed very carefully. And I think that one of the things that we want to still insist on is that design still does matter. And I think that one of the reasons why we're a very strong team is because the examples that Kelly showed and Jill showed of their work seems to, in terms of the quality of that first 30 feet, be really what's required here versus other kinds of development choices. So that's very important to us. So last thing here, I'm zooming in to show you the people are going to have very nice coats in the future when we're finished with nice patterns. But it's really this scale, back to the photographs that Jill showed us, that really matter finally when all is said and done, and even during the phasing of the project. With that, Matt's going to do a big rah-rah closing thing.
Actually, I'm just going to tell you a story. Thanks, Tim. This is Tim with UTEAL. He's a big part of our team. Actually, a story about Ed O'Donnell, who about 8 months ago gave us a call and said, hey, look, I've seen you, I know you guys are doing stuff in Boston, I know I've seen your website, I kind of get this whole idea, principles of place, 20-minute living, and he goes, that's pretty cool. I want you to come check something out. So he said he sent us an address, and we met at City Hall, so sure, we don't know where we're at. And we get here, and he starts taking us around. He starts driving us around, he shows us all the different squares and how they knit together, and then he stops the car and he says, I want to show you this. And we walk into Artists Island. And we meet this guy, he didn't work there, he's there, he's just there. And he takes us around and has this incredible conversation with us. And he's so passionate about it. And then we go next door and the guys had just opened up. It's like a month into Broken Boulders. These guys are just like beaming. They got 1,000 people to join in the first month. They're so excited. And he just sat there and we had this great conversation. I took a walk with John Lannon. It took us 30 minutes to cross Union Square because we couldn't stop running into people and just starting these great conversations. And I stopped and I said, that's it. That's what's so amazing about this place. It's because there's all these things, the core function of it is that we're not going to walk past each other, we're going to stop and we're going to stare somebody in the face and we're going to have face-to-face conversation. That's it. That's what makes this place so wonderful, is that people do want to interact. And what this great opportunity is, and I really believe in this team, and I believe in our mission, and I believe in how we go about things, the great opportunity is together to look not just 20 years, but 30, 40, 50, 100 years down the way, and make sure that what we do now doesn't stop someone from simply engaging, simply having those conversations. With that, thank you very much. Any questions you have, we certainly welcome them.
Well, thanks a lot. We'll take a couple questions. I don't know if Eric wants to double up. We got Mimi asking questions of everybody. Be nice to have a couple questions from the CAC, a couple questions perhaps from the audience. But I do want to say we've seen 6 development teams present so far. They've all been extremely high quality presentations. I think it's a mark of the community and of the work at City Hall. And I think it's really a great start. So, questions? What? No, that's okay. Mimi can ask her question again. Can you come up? You've got a question?
I'll ask from here.
Yeah, you can jump to Mimi's question. I think that was about strengths and weaknesses and the challenge of the development.
Yeah, I'll take the challenge part of this question. I think we've talked about, obviously there's a certain scale to this, but I think one of the really important parts is how it's phased and how it's timed. I think there's a lot of different uses that everyone's looking for, and I think that how those are introduced is going to be imperative. So they're not sitting there with a couple 100,000 square feet that we have to fill with somebody that isn't the right person. I think being very careful and very direct about how you go about each block, I think is going to be a pretty key piece as we look going forward.
The other half of the question, I think, is about biggest weakness. I would say that our biggest perceived weakness likely is that we're not here, that we're not a Boston-based company, and we don't have an office here. And I would say that while that is definitely true, I think that we are very well grounded and very experienced in actually working here on the streets with boots on the ground, our own boots on the ground, a lot. In fact, I spend more time here probably than I do at home, despite the fact that my mailing address is in Portland. Last fall during the election, or the run-up to the election for Boston's new mayor, I ran into Mayor Walsh several times, or I guess then pursuing the position of mayor. And he kept saying hi to me and, you know, kind of acknowledging me and you know, seeking my vote, so to speak. And I, at one point, got to the point where I was like, you do realize that I can't actually vote here. And he's like, oh, of course you can. Well, but no, I guess the point being, we spend a lot of time here, on the ground. If other than building great real estate, most people would think that our job is to support the airlines and keep them in business. The other thing I'd say is that perhaps being non-local and being new, relatively new to town, is an advantage. There's a fresh perspective that comes from that.
Thank you. Mimi, was that okay? Okay. Any other questions from the audience? I know it's a little late. I can't get this mic out to you.
They can hear me.
Okay.
I'm a resident of 40 years. I represent a lot of people who are used to things being decided, and then we have our meeting and we're kind of told that this is what's decided. How can you guarantee this open forum where you want to hear from the citizens first? So we can make a decision on the short list of developers. So we can tell you what we would like Union Square used for, where we would like it, how we would like it done, I mean, style. I know a 90-year-old that is interested in what style, a 15-year-old that's interested in jobs. I mean, so how can you guarantee that kind of openness instead of just walking through Union Square?
So, I mean, I think that the way we can guarantee it is we can tell you that, in fact, that's what we're going to do. We're going to come in and we're going to meet with the community and the different stakeholders and listen, as I said in the presentation, because I think that's really a key piece, and try to really listen and allow our assumptions to be challenged and engage. You know, we get that there's summer vision, and we get that that's been put together with a lot of thought and a lot of participation, and we've read it, and we now want to hear actually from people whether they were engaged in that process or not. But I think our job is to implement the vision of the community. It will not be successful, and we will not be successful if we don't approach it that way.
I think that what's important for the team is that the result is authentic and seamless with the entire community. It's not a project that has boundaries, and that's what they want to build, and that actually makes the place as a desirable place to live. And if you go to any of the development projects in Portland, you can't tell where their projects end and the rest of the city is. It's a complete blend. And that requires, as I said before, a cultural anthropological approach where you listen to everybody very carefully and you actually embrace all of the things that you hear. Without that, we wouldn't know what to do, quite frankly. So,
great. Jane, if you make it really quick, I can't have another 6-minute question. Here. Like one question, one sentence.
Thinking about edges, my understanding is that this project that you'll be working on is 12 acres, right? And it's part of a much larger vision. So how, in fact, would you think about the larger dimension of the project as you're working on your 12 acres?
That's a great question.
It passed to me. Well, we were involved with my firm was involved with 2 planning studies in 2004, 2007. It set some of the framework for the parcels that we're discussing today, and I think that it has to do finally with both tying the developments very closely into the streetscape improvements that are proposed and are going to happen in a very fundamental way. And it also means that in the presentations that we give moving forward, that we function as much like film directors as we do planners, which is to always start through the eyes of a pedestrian walking toward the square to discuss what you see when, including the things that are already there. That you don't set apart the parcels that are available that we're developing as the only story. It should be the punchline of a discussion that starts way back on Prospect, starts way back on Somerville Ave, and culminates to help us make decisions. So even the way we describe the projects through a narrative, through a kind of eye level of narrative, I think is going to de facto do the things that the plan has to do, or we won't know what to do. Does that answer your question, sort of? Good enough?
So I think we're going to wrap up. We're a little bit past the deadline, even though Amanda did an amazing job keeping people on track. And we're going to meet here again exactly 1 week from tonight at 6 to 8 again, and hear the last 3 development team presentations. I'm going to give Ed the last word in a second. But I thank everybody for coming, and yeah, please, thank you. Give everybody a hand for all their work.
I just want to add one thing, and that is the fact that I hope everyone realizes that we are here as the result of a planning and participation effort that has been happening for probably at least the last 10 years. There have been literally hundreds of meetings, thousands of discussions. We have adopted new zoning, we have adopted a revitalization plan, we have adopted a master planning document, which is singularly the most vital document that I've ever seen. So I want folks to know that in every case, we are erring on the side of more discussion, more openness. You can see all of the meetings online, you can see them on local cable. So we want folks to realize that we are seeking the involvement, the questions, and the participation from everyone. So we thank you for that. One last thing, I want to respond to something that Matt said. I have not used the word cool since I was about 11 years old. And that was 14 or 15 years ago. So thank you, appreciate everyone's involvement.